One overriding story surrounding the MLS Cup champions this week. The Columbus Crew, except they're not the Crew anymore, don't mention the Crew, with a rebrand which hasn't gone down particularly well. Exhibit A is the new badge, which was about to leak out, and that led to an announcement of a future without Crew in the name, but the supporters can mention the Crew. So it's all a bit confusing and a bit woolly at the moment. What have you made of it, Taylor?
Well, what I made of it is, as you watch the timeline, is that obviously the Haslam and Edwards family looked at it and said, you know what, hold on a minute. We're not aligned with how we intend to operate. We needed to incorporate the largest fan base and supporters group within Columbus in the Crew in the Nordeck. And so they looked at that and said, you know what, we're going to raise our hand and say, you know what, we didn't do this right. Now, whether or not you and I like the rebrand or not, that's kind of, it's irrelevant if you really think about it, John. Because I was in this league when Sporting Kansas City came out, and all of us looked around and we laughed at it and said, Sporting Kansas City? Like, what sporting club are they? And then now you look at what the Illig family has done, and honestly, with what that brand is, nobody talks about that anymore. However, my observation from the outside looking in, I felt like we were reliving Save the Crew again. And I feel like it's very wrong and unjust to do this to the Haslam family and the Edwards family. And the reason why is the moment they took over this franchise, they've delivered in spades. They've done everything they've needed to do. They spent $13.5 million on the roster. They're delivering a $300 million plus stadium in the training facility. And so then I see all these comments and I'm like, hold on here. Because 4 years ago, when Precourt and that ownership group was being told, you know what, you didn't do enough, there was individual and corporates pledges to saying, you know what, we want to stake our claim and keep this team in Columbus. And I've done some digging, John. I've done some asking, journalism, whatever you want to call it. And I've asked those questions. A lot of that hasn't been delivered.
Really?
If you take away Nationwide, who's delivered, and that's going to be announced shortly, and Ohio Health, a lot of it hasn't delivered. So the Haslam and Edwards family are looking at this saying, listen, we're building this $300 million complex in downtown Columbus. We want it to be Columbus's own. I don't think they should have got rid of the Crew, but I'm not going to sit here and treat them as if they're trying to move the team somewhere else when what they're trying to do is make it stick and make it work. Otherwise, John, what are we doing in 8-9 years from now? Are we still having this conversation? Because from what I've been told, the corporate sponsorship and the individual sponsorship of the Columbus Crew has been, quote, soft. And until that changes, I don't care what the rebrand is. The Haslam family is doing the best they can. Oh, and reminder, they won an MLS Cup last year. They've delivered in spades. I don't know why there was that much anger towards this, because they raised their hand immediately and said, you know what, we need to redo this.
But just briefly, and to play devil's advocate, if you're a supporter and you've been through the Save the Crew experience and the trauma of that 3 years ago, isn't this a fairly natural reaction because you're extra sensitized?
100%, which is why I think the Haslam family and the Edwards family should have done better and should have known that. Quite frankly, Major League Soccer owners should look at what happened with Chicago and their rebrand. You've got to always incorporate the fans. Why wouldn't you? The supporters are the heartbeat of this league, especially now that you're hitting 26 years. You've now got history. They've done that, but they raised their hand. They were accountable. They've said, we've screwed up. We want to fix this. But that also doesn't mean every single time you make decisions as a franchise owner, you're going to be aligned with the supporters group. So it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. I just felt like the anger towards the Haslam and Edwards family, I'm not so sure, because what those families have done and that ownership group has done, John, we're talking about a completely different Columbus Crew, Columbus SC, whatever you want to call it, it's completely different, and they just won MLS Cup, and yet we're treating them like they want to move the team to San Diego. That's not what they did.
Do you think we'll be in a very different place in, say, a week's time?
I do, because I think the Haslam and the Edwards family raising their hand saying, you know what, we didn't do this right. I do. Will it be the Columbus Crew? I don't know that answer, but I think there's going to be more synergy within the supporters groups and the owners, and it's going to be a real good example for how MLS owners should operate in the future.
And the next step is a meeting in this coming week between the ownership and the major independent supporters group, and we anxiously await what transpires from that.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN+.